Morning, it's Matt from Go Green Autos here. I'm in a Kangoo ZE22 this morning. This is a 2013, the original shape, the old model, 22 kilowatt hour battery. So I was just going to make this video as an example of how not to trust the range meter. And it's a common mistake people have. They get their electric van new to them and they leave the range display on the screen and put too much trust in it. But this is wildly inaccurate on many electric cars, but particularly on the Renault Kangoo, and even more so on the older models. So as an example, I have just left Tetbury and I'm now in Cirencester and I've driven 20 miles. When I left, this range meter was on 80 miles, which was about right. And it's now on 57 miles. So in 20 miles, I have lost, God, my maths isn't, so I've lost 22 miles. However, when I left, the first 10 meters, I lost a mile. The next 200 yards, I lost a mile. The next 400 yards, I lost a mile. And I was losing a mile about every quarter of a mile. And that's the problem, is the range meter is very inaccurate. And you find that it initially loses about half its range in like quarter of the battery. And then you'll be driving about a quarter of a mile and you'll lose a mile. And then slowly it will get better. And then as you get to the other half of the battery, you'll find you will do about 4 miles to every mile on the gasometer. So the mistake everyone makes is putting too much trust in that. You're far better using the buttons on the stalk and displaying something else on your screen and just using the fuel tank gauge, just like the old petrol or diesel car. And on these, if you're driving in the summer and you're driving reasonably economically, you know you're going to get 80 miles to a battery. And quite conveniently, you've got these little ticks, and each tick works out at 10 miles. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 at naught. And if you drive like that, you don't worry too much about range. You don't put too much trust in this range meter and you don't get range anxiety. What I see frequently is people call me because they've seen my videos and they say, I've got a Kangoo van and it's getting poor range. I'm not getting many miles to the battery. And that's because they're looking at the range meter. And actually, while we're sitting here, I've got the motor on. The other thing you have, which you can see here, it's just lost another 2 miles of range. Yet we haven't moved. I've only been filming for 2 minutes. Yet the traction battery hasn't lost any power at all. Well, a little bit. What it's actually doing is charging the 12-volt battery while we sit here. However, that power loss is hardly measurable. So the algorithm behind this range meter is very inaccurate. And just sitting at a traffic light or a junction, you'll lose a mile of range. However, it does all work itself out. By the time you get to the bottom part of the battery, you've got less battery to play with, and it does get a little more accurate. But what you really want to do, if you're worried about the range of your vehicle and you think it's got problems, and almost every owner of one of these, when they get it, think that. Firstly, don't have that range meter on the screen. But secondly, the crucial figure is your average economy. And sorry, that's the average speed. Let's get the right one up. You want the miles per kilowatt hour. There it is, 3.85 miles per kilowatt hour. So this is equivalent to MPG in a ICE vehicle. So this is how many miles you're going to drive on 1 kilowatt hour of electricity. And obviously you've got a 22 kilowatt hour pack. Let's just keep it easy maths because I don't have my calculator on me because I'm filming on my phone. So let's say I've been driving 4 miles per kilowatt hour and it's a 20 kilowatt hour battery. Roughly we've got 20 kilowatts of usable space, so that's a range of 80 miles. So if you think your van is giving you poor range and you're not getting what you expect, the first thing you've got to do is look at your average driving. Ideally you would reset it, and you reset it by holding the buttons in on the stalk, and then do a bit of your normal driving, see what your average economy is, and that's a test of the performance of the van, not the range meter at all. So ideally, like I've just done this trip, I've driven about 60 odd miles, and my average economy is 3.85. That's okay. It's not great, but my driving has all been on A roads, from Oxford to Tetbury and back, and it was sort of 50 mile an hour most of the time, so I'm getting very little regen back, very little stopping. So if you're doing town driving in the summer, you want to be somewhere between 4 and 5 miles per kilowatt hour. Anything below 3.5, I would say, is far too poor. And I've had people call me and they're getting 2 miles per kilowatt hour. And that's why they're getting poor range, is because they're using a lot of fuel, using a lot of electrons. So the other problem with these is people effectively don't know how to drive them, and you get in an electric vehicle and it's very easy to drive too fast. It's very easy to stick your foot down on the accelerator too much and accelerate too quickly, much more quickly than you would with a diesel van, purely because you're not getting the same feedback, you're not getting the same noise, vibration and senses back, and you don't realize your speed. And just like a petrol or diesel van, if you stick your foot down, you drive uneconomically, you're going to get less range, and it's no different. So really, on a Kangoo van, really 4 miles per kilowatt hour is what you want to be aiming for. I do have customers in London who are just driving lower speeds and lots of stop start, so therefore lots of regen back, and they can get well over 5.5 in the summer with economical driving. So yes, this is how obviously you estimate or work out the range of your battery. This is the power you're pulling from the pack. So I'm currently doing 3.85 miles per kilowatt hour. Then you times that by the amount of kilowatt hours you got in your battery. This is a 22 kilowatt hour battery. If it's at 100%, I've got 22 kilowatt hours to use. If it's at 90%, I can't do the maths, but I've got 21 kilowatt hour or 20 kilowatt hours to use, something like that. So it's as simple as that to work out. That's what you need to concentrate on, not the range meter. So I hope that video helps. And as I said, the easiest thing, ignore what's on the screen, put the mileage or something else up there, and just look at the battery pack and treat it like the old way of driving your diesel vehicle, because this doesn't give you range anxiety so much. It's much more simple to understand. You just watch the needle drop, and this is your fuel dropping. And if you roughly, assuming it's summer, if you roughly treat every bar as 10 miles, that's pretty much what it will do if you're driving reasonably. And then in the winter, you're going to use a bit more. You're going to have like a 20-25% loss in the winter. It does depend on how much heating you use, because that draws an awful lot of power, because these have a resistive heater. But anyway, I hope that helps. And key thing is, do not look at the range meter. They are wildly inaccurate. Some EVs are better than others, but these Kangoos are particularly bad, and it will make you have range anxiety. You'll make you think there's something wrong with the van. Most people then think there's something wrong with the battery pack, and it makes you worry unnecessarily. The algorithm behind that range meter is clearly very inaccurate. Actually, I've been filming now for 8 minutes. Let's have a look at our current range just before I sign off. Where are we? Range. So as you can see, I haven't moved, and it's dropped even more. We're now down to 50 miles. Yeah, I know we have got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. We've got 65 miles range left in the battery. Okay, I hope that helps. Cheers.